everybody. This is the last of the orientation trainings. So we've got myself, David Turner, David Burton, and Jared Heggie, both partners out of the Vantage Canada White division. So we're going to do a little bit of a Q&A style, ask each other some questions, and get everybody prepared for the summer. So this is the final countdown. It's going to be here before you know it, and so we want to dive right into it. So first thing that we're going to talk about is the difference between discipline and motivation. What are your thoughts on that, David?
Well, that's a great question because obviously coming into sales, and I'm mostly speaking to first years here, but I guess these principles hold true for any experienced reps as well. But the difference is really important. So motivation is more of a feeling. It's going to be on that emotional scale. It can be fleeting, just as being happy or being sad or being frustrated. And so it's not really something that you want to come into a summer and depend on. And I'll kind of expound on that a little bit. So motivation, for example, you can gain it from anything like listening to a song or a motivational video, a great correlation, maybe a pep talk from one of your managers. And you can feel really, hyped up, excited, like you want to put in all this work and effort. And then you can lose it just as easily by, running into somebody who's angry on the doors, or you can, get very little sleep that day and you're tired. Like there's a whole ton of variables that can go into affecting your motivation. It's going to be a flow of ups and downs. And so what you want to do is on the ups, when you are feeling motivated, you want to capitalize on that, right? Like you want to use the motivation to push you further than you normally would be able to. But then on the downs and anywhere in between, you want to rely on discipline. So discipline is a practice, not a feeling. That's going to be how you carry yourself day to day, your habits, your non-negotiables, what you're putting in every single day, hours-wise, things like that. There's actually an influencer, I guess, who I follow on Instagram, and this is paraphrasing what his quote was the other day that I came across one of his videos, but he said, if you wanted something bad enough, you would do what it takes to get there, period. If you tell me you want something that badly and then you don't take the steps to get there, that's how I know you're lying. Because someone out there has the same set of excuses that you do, and they're not using them. You are. Treat your promises to yourself and others like it's survival. And that resonated with me. When it comes to this summer, there are going to be a lot of things that you could use as excuses. There's a plethora. A rain day, you're tired, you're hungry, it's dark, whatever the case may be. It's always going to be discipline that comes into play to make sure that you stay consistent and you don't have those slumps during the summer that those who rely on motivation do. So I would just say keep that in mind when it comes to things like goal setting, when it comes to your day-to-day, your routine. Don't rely on motivation, rely on discipline, and keep that as your number one practice. Right back at you. Rookies coming into the summer are going to hear the term ramp a lot, right? Some people will say like the rampening or ramping up during the summer. Kind of delve into that a little bit. What is the concept of the ramp and how does it apply to rookies in their first summer?
Yeah, so you're going to hear, like he said, this term, the ramp. So the ramp is quite simply like the ideal summer. Like it's really not about how many accounts you do or what your total rev is. Like obviously those are important. We'll get into that when we talk goals and everything. But your ideal summer is all about your trajectory. Like it doesn't matter where you start. It's all about how you finish is really what, in my opinion, makes it, makes who you are, is how you're finishing it and how you're progressing throughout the summer. So, just don't get in your head. If you get in your head, you're dead. Like initially, a lot of reps might, struggle. They don't have their best day the first day of the summer, right? The first week's not going to be your best week. If it is, then you're doing something wrong. That's the whole concept of the ramp, is you want to continually getting better. Typically what we've seen is you're going to do anywhere from like 10 to 15% of your total production on the summer in the month of May. So with that said, that's not to say that May is not a good month to sell, that you won't sell really well, but you are typically going to sell more in June and more in July than you are going to in May. And there's a lot of factors to that. Like, it's kind of a culmination of multiple things. So if you're putting in the time day in and day out, you're going to just continue to be getting better every single day. And so that's a big part of the ramp, is it's all about the effort level that you're putting in. And if you're consistently making sure that you're talking to enough people, you're controlling the controllables, then you inevitably just get better day after day, and that starts to compound. And that's why you do so much better in June. So you just want to make sure to not get, super in your head if you're at 10, 15 accounts the first month, because if you're just on average, you still do 100, 150 accounts over the course of the whole summer. A lot of people make the mistake that they take their first couple weeks and they start extrapolating and say, well, I'm already 25% of the way through the summer, so if I multiply where I'm at right now, I'm only going to do 40 accounts and I'm not going to hit my goals and I'm not going to make enough money. And they're either losing confidence, losing motivation, or worst case, even going home, which we don't want anybody to do. If you can just stick it out and trust the ramp, that it is a real thing. But the ramp only works if you're putting in the effort. I've had this talk at the beginning of summers previously, and then I'll talk to someone maybe the second or third week in May. And I'm like, oh, how's it going? Maybe they're struggling. And I hate hearing this. And I've heard it a couple times where they say, oh, it's fine. I know May's, not going to be a great month, so I'm just excited for June. That's really where I'm going to kick it in high gear. That's really when I'm going to sell all my accounts. The ramp is not this magical thing that just happens in June. It's not that, sure, more bugs come out throughout the summer and there's factors that are in, there's some wind in your sails as you get later into the summer, but it's not this magical thing that just happens June 1st where you can all of a sudden sell 5 people a day when previously you were selling 1. It is the process of what you put into May is what creates the June, the July, the August, and how it starts to ramp. So just make sure that if you want that big pop in June and July, you've got to be putting in the hours, you've got to be putting in the training, you've got to be putting everything into it in May to make that happen and for you to have that progressive ramp, which is what the ideal summer looks like. So that's kind of my general thought on the ramp, is that it's something that you create. It's not this magical effect through the summer, but that's the ideal summer. What we want to see from everybody is continual improvement. If you can do that, regardless of the total number that you finish at, that's how you're going to feel like it was a successful summer overall, and that's how you're going to gain my respect. I have way more respect for somebody that started out doing 10 their first month, and they ramp up and they do 100 at the end, and they just kept getting better each month. I have way more respect for that than somebody that just comes out the gate swinging and they sell 80 their first month and then they kind of just coast and they end up just doing 80 a month. That's still a fantastic summer. They made great money, but I have way more respect for the person that continually kept beating on the craft and getting better and better, and that's what we want to see out of everybody.
And just to double down on that, between the three of us, we've hired or onboarded literally hundreds. I don't even know how many reps, 1,000 reps, whatever. So we've been able to see this process over and over and over. So not to quote Joel Embiid or anything here, because he's not a role model of mine at all, but trusting the process genuinely is just so important. It's foolproof. If you do have the consistent effort that you're talking about throughout the summer, to just trust in that ramp, it does happen. It does click. You do start selling. It'll just happen one day. Sometimes it might be a couple days till it clicks. Heaven forbid, a couple weeks. But regardless, it will click as long as the effort's consistent. And it's easier to see that from a bird's eye view, where you've seen, yourself go through the process or other rookies go through the process. But, it can be harder when you're in the trenches, but you just really have to just trust that it will happen. It's inevitable. So just to kind of double click on that.
100%. I think a lot of times reps come out and their initial reaction when they first meet a recruiter from Vantage or in the door-to-door space in general, they're like, oh, there's a ton of money to be made, which there is. It's why a lot of us end up choosing this as a career. But at the end of the day, that's not going to be enough to push you to the limits to be able to reach that financial goal that you guys have set. It has to be something different. There has to be something else fueling your fire, which is maybe helping your family out of a hard financial space, to having the opportunity of hey, I'm going to be in this long enough that I'm going to meet a lot of entrepreneurs this is going to by far outweigh the financial benefit. I'm going to be able to have good communication skills. And when you think of it from that standpoint, that's going to be able to actually push you a lot farther than anything else. Because a lot of these college kids, like for me at least, when I was in college, when I was in high school, going into college, like I never had more than $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 in my bank account ever. And a lot of guys, once they hit that like income level of just like, hey, I'm at like 10 or 15 or 20,000, they're like, hey, like I've never had this. I can take the foot off the pedal a little bit and kind of ease up. Kind of call it the income thermostat analogy. I don't know if you guys have heard that before, but at the end of the day, once you hit kind of a level of that, or even 30 or 40 or maybe even 50 grand, that you may like ease up. But when it comes to being like, hey, I want to be the best, or I want to make sure I like capitalize on my communication skills, like like I was talking about earlier, like there has to be something else like deep down that's going to fuel you, because
to just keep ramping.
Yes, exactly.
Not get complacent.
Yeah, because it just won't be enough from what I've seen with 95% of sales reps. There are some. I think we've all seen the guys that are just like so money driven, they just make it happen. But a lot of us aren't wired that way.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that's huge to view it as things that you can get out of this job other than the money. Obviously, the main reason you come out and do this is for the money. It's a huge sacrifice. Yeah. Like it's going to be mentally, emotionally, physically draining at times to do this. But obviously not everyone's willing to do it. That's why you can make as much money as you can in it. But yeah, I think one hack that I've done personally and I've had reps and managers over the years do that I think can really take you to the next level is looking more outwardly, like viewing it as like how, not just what can I get out of this, but what can I give? There's a phrase, the secret to living is giving. Like if you can set some giving goals as well as your getting goals, which is going to be all the things that, you want to receive for yourself, that can also really push you past where you typically would go. When you really double down on like doing things for the team, doing things for like your friends that are out there where it's like, hey, I want to work really hard. I want to put in all the hours, not just because like I have my own goals and I want to make money, but when it's for somebody else, that is the secret sauce, in my opinion, where you can really tap into another level that you usually wouldn't be at, especially if you're an experienced rep where you've sold kind of consistently year over year. I think that is what I've seen take people to a whole nother level, is when they start setting giving goals where it's like, hey, I want to have this extra tier of income because I'm going to be giving in these ways, whether it's to, a cause or just to your family or, to people that you know and love. Like setting giving goals is huge, because there's a phrase, it's like that unhappiness is the hunger to get and happiness is the hunger to give. So if you're really focusing on like how can you give in different ways, it doesn't have to just be financially. I do think financially can help, but just in ways that you can give on the team. Like every person on the team can be a leader in a way, because if you're viewing this as an opportunity to, hey, I want to like set the tone for my car group or for the team, and I want to be, the first one that's dropped off and the last one picked up. Like if you're kind of doing those little micro ways to give back to your team, you're going to get so much more out of the summer, and it's going to be more enjoyable all around. Okay, so there's another two words that I think are really important in this job, and it's energy and attitude. So either of you want to take this and kind of talk to the importance of both of those in this job?
Yeah, I can go on that. So we had a training, like a manager's retreat kind of training a couple months ago, and we had Mr. Cartwright, right? Dougie. He came by and he did this phenomenal training for us. And I'd say the focal point of what he talked about was that, in our circumstances, like in the everyday to-day life, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. There's a roller coaster of emotions that we feel. And so there's a lot of things that are, impacting us, right? Like things that are out of our control that we can't control, such as like other people's actions on the doors, whatever the case may be. But what we can control is our internal energy. So hopefully I don't butcher this, but he gave this analogy where he's like, okay, who in here is a fan of sports? And I actually raised my hand and he ended up picking me, but my favorite team is OKC Thunder. And he's like, okay, so you're watching the game with a bunch of friends and, it's game 7 of the championship game. and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who's the main player on the team, hits the buzzer beater, wins the game. How are you feeling? And I was like, well, of course I'd be like elated, right? Like I'd be on top of the world. I'd be so happy. And then he was asking other people in the room that know me, and he was like, okay, well, what would David be doing? Like, you go out that night, you go, grab something to eat. He's buying everybody their meal. He's buying everybody drinks. He's on top of the world. Like, this is the feedback that he's getting from this experience, right? And then he's like, okay, and he gave the exact opposite scenario. He takes the game-winning shot, misses, OKC loses. How is David feeling? What's his mood like for the next week? And obviously this is, human nature. It's going to be pretty predictable. But his point was that where did that energy come from? The first scenario where it was positive energy, where did it come from? The second scenario where it was negative energy, where did it come from? And the answer to both of those is that it came from within, right? So not to get too like voodoo, kind of like pixie dust and fairies, kind of vibes here, but like energy is actually just so important, and it impacts every single facet of this job. The energy that you procure from within, genuinely, like it is up to you. That is 100% a controllable variable in the whole scheme of sales and how you do. And you decide every single day what your energy looks like, if it's positive or it's negative. And if it's positive, then everything you interact with during that day, that week, that month, that summer is going to be positively impacted and go towards a positive outcome. So then attitude is obviously really important too. And one thing, I heard this a while ago, if you ever want to, kind of like a check and balance on why your performance is lower than you feel it should be, just look at three things. What is your energy? What is your attitude? And what is your work ethic? Every single time, if you're underperforming, you can just look at those three things. One of them is going to be off. Like, how many times have we seen, including ourselves, high performers that go out for, a couple days or a week, and it's just like dog water. Like, we can't sell. We're like, calling a buddy to complain. You know what I mean? Like, that's where, attitude comes in. I feel like you can have all the skill in the world, but if your attitude isn't positive, then people aren't going to receive you well on the doors. So I know it's not as much of a tangible per se, like energy and attitude. Work ethic is pretty easy to measure. Like, it's how many hours are you on the doors, things like that. But those two things combined, if you ever want to, like I say, just kind of like a check and balance of where you're at in the summer, why you're not performing how you should be, go to those two things. And I think you'll find one of them, as long as the hours are there, one of those two is off every single time. You just got to correct that. Know that both of them are within your control, and then your performance will come right back again.
It's funny you say that, because I think it was our third or fourth year, and I had a rep that was in our office selling, and the years prior, we had like Scott Mazatinek, Caden Parrott, I can't remember who else we had knock. I think Kyle Selk knocked this area, and I put my cousin in it, and it was fine, and he called me after like 10 doors, and he's just mad. He's like, hey, like, this isn't working out, like, this is just, area's been killed by like the other reps that have just knocked it, like they've just slaughtered this place. I'm like, dude, there's sales there. You just have to be happy. Just understand that like it's gonna come. I kid you not, like 45 minutes later, I checked the leaderboard, 3 sales. Yeah. And then I talked to him that night, and he was like, I think he finished with 7. And he was like, yeah, I just had to give my head a shake a little bit and just have good energy, because I was so down that these other good reps have knocked this area, and I didn't think it was possible, but
yeah, it's really like your energy and your attitude are going to determine your reality.
100%.
Which is crazy to think about, but really that's how it is. Like, it impacts everything that you touch, everyone that you talk to. Like, it's just, it's really like a ripple effect. So
wild.
I've got another one. So obviously, like, we talk about how, energy, speaking on energy and attitude and how that can attribute to high performance and things like that. This one's for you specifically. You've had some massive days That's no secret for anybody who's been in Vantage for any amount of time. Multiple 20-plus days, huge competitions won, everything from, Survivor to Team Cup, things like that, where you've led from the front. What do you think goes into those big days to be able to get to that point?
Yeah, I think so much of it is just beforehand, like really having the belief that you can do it. Like that is, the confidence is really king in this job. Like if you can get confidence, like it's like the grease that gets you going, and it's the oil that makes the machine run, right? Like, but the hard part is it's the chicken and egg scenario where, how do you get confidence? It's by having success, right? And then how are you successful? It's by having confidence, right? Like that. So it's like, well, which comes first, right? But it's like, honestly, you got to fake it till you make it. Just like be happy, right? Like remember to smile. Like you start off with the simple things like that. And then I think going into it and just really visualizing, like I'm really big on, before I go into like intentionally trying to have a really big day, I'm visualizing it beforehand. I'm like, okay, if I want to sell 20, what's that going to look like? How much time am I spending at each house? Like how many people do I need to talk to? Like I'm really breaking it down like that. And we obviously I've done this for a long time. We used to be on paper contracts, or I guess a lot of people still have paper contracts, but we would have these little like appointment reminder cards that we would give people once we switched to the iPads, because we're so used to having paper contracts. They're like, I got to leave something. And so we'd have like these little reminder cards of like your appointments at this day and this time. So when I would go into a day where I'm planning on selling 20, then I would get 20 of those appointment reminder cards and I'd have them in my pocket. And then throughout the day, as I'm selling, I'm going back like in between doors and I'm feeling my pocket to like feel like, okay, how many sales do I have left? Like, that's how I'd kind of keep track of how many I still need to sell. But yeah, I've never sold 20 without intentionally going into the day being like, okay, I'm going to sell 20 today, and visualizing it and like thinking it out, because everything is created in your mind before it actually like happens in reality. So I think that's a big part of it. If you want to like take, having like a big day, a big week, a big month, a big summer, you got to break it down in that way and kind of intentionally, Will Smith talks about like building a wall. Like you might have seen that video where it's like, if you want to build a wall, you don't set out and say, I'm going to build this massive wall. You just lay one brick perfectly, one brick at a time, and that's how you get like, a wall. So I view the summer as like that massive wall where you just have to like continually lay each brick as perfectly as you can. And that's from, getting out of the car at the right time. It's talking to enough people every day. Like that's the easiest thing to measure and set goals around, is like, how many people are you talking to every day? Like if you're not talking to at least 60 people a day, you're doing yourself a disservice. Like you've got to figure out what you're doing that's preventing you from hitting that, whether that is that you need to walk faster in between the doors, you need to spend less time on non-buyers, if you need to just work longer hours, like whatever it takes. That's like step one, is you gotta talk to enough people. But that's really what it's gone into it for me on the bigger days and the competitions, is obviously just buying into it. And then it's just being confident that like, hey, like I know that if I give it everything I got, that the outcomes will be there. And it doesn't happen every time. Like I tried to sell 20 and I fully believed it, and I was 100% certain that I was going to sell 20 on Memorial Day last year, and I sold 12, right? Like I sold like half of what I wanted to. Jared freaking sold 14 and beat me. But, I was still like happy with the result because I knew I gave it everything I got, and I talked to the right people I was supposed to. I did everything I was supposed to. So, it's not a magic wand where it's going to happen exactly like that every time. But if you're teeing yourself up in that way and visualizing it, planning on it happening, then you're definitely going to get a lot closer or hit it more consistently.
That's awesome. Going back at you again, not trying to put you on the hot seat, but I feel like there's two types of reps. There's like the reps that go above and beyond, even if their numbers say don't really show for it, and then the reps that just they never reach their full potential. What are the best practices that you've seen that sales reps like year in and year out always do?
Like specific to like the goal setting?
Yeah, goal setting, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, on like that side of things with setting goals, like we'll talk about like on a summer basis. Yeah. There's we went to Door to Door Con together, and Mike Posner, the guy who sings Took a Pill in Ibiza. That was like a random person to have on the stage. We actually had a really sick story. Yeah. Like his whole life story is really awesome. He like walked across America and all this crazy stuff. But one of the things that he talked about in there was he said, not all crazy ideas are good, but all good ideas are crazy. And so I think that kind of comes back to goals, to where it's like, don't limit yourself in thinking, hey, like I can only hit this much, like this is what the average rookie does, or I've only done this much in the past. Like really try to set a goal that does scare you and like pushes you and is past maybe where you think you can be. I think there is like a limit to that. I think you set realistic goals that are things that like you actually believe like, hey, this is gonna be tough, like, but I believe I can hit this. But I think that, yeah, you want to have a crazy goal that scares you. And I think it's important to note as well that like success isn't just, being the top rep in the company or the top rep in your office or getting a golden door. Like, I feel like the industry has started to kind of, rightfully so, really highlight those things at the very top of the leaderboards. But it's super, super impressive, and it's a huge win, and it's a huge successful summer if you are an experienced rep, for instance, and you sell twice as much as you did the summer before. If you did 100K your first summer, you should be shooting for 200K this summer. Like doubling your production from last summer is a scary goal that might be feeling like it's, a crazy idea, but it is 100% doable. I firmly believe that every single rep that has sold can sell at least 2x what they did the previous summer if they're doing everything we're talking about with putting in the efforts and having the right energy, the right attitude. Like you should sell 2x. Like, and there's plenty of people that do. That's not the average. Like the average person isn't coming out and selling 2x of what they did the previous summer, but I really genuinely believe that everyone can do that. So I just think setting the right type of goals, and then, the first step is taking, the first step essentially. Like, step one is taking the first step. And so just getting started by putting in the intangibles of, okay, I'm going to smile at every door. I'm going to I'm going to, put in the hours. I'm going to talk to minimum 60 people a day. And so I think set the goal. And then the whole point of a goal is where focus goes, energy flows. And so to have what we're talking about with that energy and the drive and everything that's going behind something, you need a target of something that you're going toward. And that's why it's so important to have a goal, because it's when it's going to set your focus. And that's what's going to then channel your energy into like pushing toward that goal. So I would set a goal, have it be tangible. Like I'm going to sell this much in revenue. And then it's not a matter of if, but when. Like I'm going to hit this. And again, don't get in your head or, lower your goal if you're like not, initially starting out on pace, because I've seen it tons of times where I've had people that start pretty slow and then they end up just ripping by the end of the summer. Like my cousin Chandler is a great example. He, sold, I think maybe 8 or 9 his first month, which is definitely way below the average. Came to me at the end of May, was like, hey, this isn't for me. I'm going home. I already bought my flight. Like I'm out of here. Luckily, it was my cousin, so I could just be like, no, like, you're not going home. You have to stick this out. And he kept bringing up the flight thing. I'm like, I'm paying for that flight. That's irrelevant that you paid for a flight already. Blew through that smoke screen, convinced him to stay out. And I was basically like, your biggest issue is like the whole time you've been like, hey, is this going to work for me? Is it not? Kind of deciding, should I stay? Should I go back? And then I was just like, you just got to burn the boats and say, I'm doing this and I'm going to make it happen. And it was crazy light switch for him. Like he really, within like a week of deciding to stay out, really started picking it up. And he did great that summer. He ended up doing just shy of like 200 counts his rookie summer. And he's done phenomenal with it. Like he was been in our like top 5 reps. Like his best summer was over 700 accounts. And so like he's amazing at it. But he didn't start that way. And so I think it's just, set goals and don't get discouraged. Just know that like you're doing this no matter what. When it comes to goals, it takes what it takes. Like you just gotta make it happen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Another thing that's helpful for, like, if you're setting a really big goal, like you say, like a goal should scare you a little, right? And with that, some pretty lofty goals are set naturally, because there's a lot of people with good ambition and skill set that come in to do this job. One of the things that I feel like is really helpful, like my rookie year, I actually came into your office, David Turner, and I said something to the effect of like, what should a goal be for me? Because I don't really know what to compare it to. I don't really know what the standard of excellence is, but I feel like I can be the best at something. And I remember you said something to the effect of like, well, you could set a goal to be like the top rookie in the company, Or you could set a goal with me to just like win Survivor, because it's this competition that, is, for those of you who are familiar, it's like pretty, I don't know, I'd say it's like a pretty integral competition to sort of Vantage's culture during the summer. And so I was like, okay, well, tell me about it, and got hyped up on it. And I decided that was my goal, and I wanted to win the rookie Survivor competition. But then this is the important part, is if you set a goal that, say, statistically puts you in the top 1%, because if you're going to try to win a competition like Survivor, or, sell a golden door, like do a golden door, or do 400 accounts or whatever it is, you're going to place yourself statistically up against everybody else. And so you have to be willing to do, like if you want to be the 1%, you have to be willing to do and actually do what 99% of other reps aren't going to do and aren't willing to do. That's really important. I feel like that's a healthy check and balance to this, where it's like, I absolutely will get behind anybody setting, goals that some others will look at them and be like, that's crazy, because that's awesome. Like that's what, lots of this is about, right? Is like stretching ourselves and growing to where the uncomfortable becomes comfortable and we accomplish it. But you have to be willing to do what that goal is going to require of you. Like it's going to be, you have to if you want to be in the top 10% at the end of the summer, you have to sacrifice probably what 90% of other reps aren't going to. And that's going to be knocking longer hours. That's going to be doing more training in the evenings, doing more role plays, prepping before the summer, goal setting efficiently, like all those things come into play to actually hitting something that is scary for you. Because if it's scary, then it's going to require a lot of sacrifice. So just something to keep in mind, like be willing to do what you set out and say you're going to. Just kind of look at it that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because it is. That's usually when someone does come to me with like a really big goal, I'll tell them like, hey, that is above the average. Like I think it's good to acknowledge that. It's not just like, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna do a golden door and you just like slap them on the butt. Yeah, get after it. Like good luck. It's like tell them like, hey, that is above the average. Like so, what are you gonna do specifically? Like think through it. It doesn't have to be a practice where you're doing it with somebody, but like all of you can do this internally, to yourself when you're setting your goals of like, what are you going to do that it's going to be different from everybody else so that you get results that are different from everybody else. So I think actually like writing those things out, I mean, David gave some great examples of it, but it's like actual tangible things of like, if I haven't hit my weekly goal, I stay out and knock until 9 p.m. on Saturday. Like, it's just like, that's what I do. Like, cause that's what I set before I went out. Like you have to kind of like set what your non-negotiables are that are going to be kind of like against the grain, against the norm to get the, unusual results. You got to be doing, the unusual, right?
Sweet. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think, I'm trying to think if we had any other questions we wanted to go through. Just final thoughts, like, any tips or tricks for everybody. You can kind of just go on anything that you'd want to kind of leave everybody with. I'll start with you, Jared.
Yeah, I like David, you were saying earlier, we've seen like hundreds of reps come through our doors, but we've also seen thousands of reps have good experiences, bad experiences at different companies, our company, whatever it is. But the thing that I've seen that's honestly really sad is that reps come out and they end up wanting to sell. They make a pile of money and then they spend it. And then instead of letting this be like a segue to get away from living paycheck to paycheck, they're still living paycheck to paycheck, even though they're making 3 or 4 or 5 times the amount that they were making before coming to work with us. There are so many people that I've seen work in this job that don't have anything to show for it anymore or after their experience, and it's honestly pretty sad. Because at the end of the day, like this industry is flawed in the fact that people come out, they make 6 figures plus 300K, whatever it is, and they go out, they buy a nice car, they buy all this nice clothes, they go on nice trips, they just spend their money frivolously, they go out to eat like the nicest restaurants, which is fine. Like there needs to be like a healthy balance between treating yourself and hitting goals and like rewarding yourself, because I think that's a very healthy thing. But there's tons of reps that I've seen, one in particular that has made a ton of money, but then really still doesn't have anything to show for it. And I look at it and I'm like, I don't want this to be that experience, that like the norm, like that the summer sales industry is, of just people just spending all this hard-earned money instead of working for principal every year to having the principal that they've made over the last few years and letting that principal work for them. And I don't think it's a bad thing to say that, like, for instance, college kids, they live on ramen and live within a budget. Like, you need to stick to that budget even after you make six figures or 70, 80, 90,000. Like, continue to put that money away and live like you don't have it, because at the end of the day, you're never going to regret saving that money and investing it properly, really. I don't think enough reps actually understand what this like job actually signifies. It's a segue to freedom, really. And if you play your cards right, this is going to put yourself in a situation that you can literally do whatever you want down the road. But that's if they actually take the opportunity to become financially like savvy and understand like what it means to actually invest properly and be financially responsible.
Yeah, like it's really healthy to keep the end in mind.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing all the goal setting and you're doing all the hard work and sacrificing your summer and everything else, you want it to pay out long term. So there's dividends, going forward. So I think a good resource, like that's important to keep in mind. A good resource for that is to talk to individuals who have done it, right? Like that's one of the nice things about this job, is that there's a lot of networking. There's a lot of people that we work with that have that experience. And I think usually a pretty healthy example of that is your management. Like hopefully at least we can look at most of the managers that we work with, and I'd like to point at both of you as good examples of that. It's like people that have been down the road before. They've been a rookie, they've been an experienced rep, they've managed a team for the first summer, they've managed multiple teams, they've managed a region, and they've been able to kind of scale and invest their money wisely and put it in places that are going to benefit them long term and kind of preserve the wealth or income that they accumulate from doing the job. So just to any of the young bucks who are just starting out the job, like I think talking to your manager is a good place to start 100%. In that regard.
Yeah. And like coming from personal experience, like I sold at Vivint for 2 years, made good money each summer. I spent that. Like it's gone. But like, and believe me, like I've been in that situation where it's like, hey, this money's come in, I'm going to go here, I'm going to buy this. Like, and it's exciting because you're like, geez, I've never had this type of money before. But at the end, you're just like, oh crap, like, well, I have to do this again because I don't have it.
Right.
So
rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat, man. It's awful.
Yeah, I mean, kind of segueing, like this is a tangent to that, but as far as tips and tricks go for, things that I could offer some value for, I think maybe my forte, I fall short in a lot of areas when it comes to consistency during the summer, but probably one of my stronger suits is buying into competitions and kind of the culture around competitiveness. And, I wouldn't be able to even talk if I didn't point out, like the Michael Jordan role model that I just consistently look to for mindset and mentality. Like I'll do the comparison all the time of like, I mean, this is more just going into like NBA, but pretty much the reason why Michael Jordan's still my GOAT is because of the mentality that he had. And I think it's just, if you want to look at reps who go from wherever they are at to something significantly higher, doesn't matter if they're already great and then they become phenomenal, or if they're like good and then they become great, right? That jump, I feel like, is often achieved in like adopting and buying in to competition. I mean, we've all been in competitions before, but it's like we sort of choose our source of, extra oomph or like motivation or, what drives us, what's fulfilling for us. And there's only so many things that you can pull from during the summer. Like you can have your why, and that should be deeply rooted. And then, you can have your goals, right? So that's going to be like how much money you need to make, things like that. But the reason why we have so many competitions during the summer is because they work. So you can stay in your own lane, absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with that. But even if you're not a competitive spirit, like if you can buy into the competitions, whether it's a team competition and you feel more, drive and fulfillment that way, or if it's some of these solo competitions like Survivor, like really buy into them and prove something to yourself. I think your biggest competition is always going to be yourself. So outdoing what you did the day before, outdoing what you did the week before. And I think there's like a few little hacks that you can do on that front. One of them is give yourself something tangible to measure your success with on the day-to-day. Like, it's a funny thing. It's pretty cliche, but like I carry my snacks with me because I don't take lunches. I think pretty much we've all adopted that at this point. Like when you go out, especially during competitions, but honestly throughout the whole summer at this point, we just go out and from start time till end time, we don't take a break. We don't eat, right? No dinner, no lunch. And so you'll bring snacks with you. That's kind of like a normal thing to do, right? If you need a little energy boost during the day still. So for me, I'll like bring out some Welch's, just fruit snacks. And like I get to eat, I like do this little hack. It's so stupid, but it's worked for me. And honestly, I think it's worked for a couple other people that I've worked with over the years. You get to like eat a Welch every sale you get, and it's like you're hungry there. So it's just like this mental hack of like you want to eat something, and so you have to like incentivize yourself. It's a negative consequence. If you don't sell, you don't get to eat the fruit snacks, right? So like something like that can be a little bit of a hack. Other things you can do are, sort of put yourself up against somebody on your team. Another natural way to buy into competition is like outside of, car wars and throwdown Thursdays and stuff like that, pace set with somebody on your team that stretches you and pushes you because they're better than you, but you want to become better than them, right? Like buy into that competitive spirit. There's a ton more that I could go off on, but it's just like the general concept of buying into these competitions is just, for myself, I almost every single year I do 60% of my production in 1 month. So it's like I need to step it up in the other months, but like it's because I buy into the competition during July and I let that just fuel me. Like I have this mindset of like I will not lose. I can be the best at this. And it doesn't always pay off, obviously. Like you had the 20-day that you were going for and you got 12. I've set out to win a competition and gotten absolutely murked. But like at the end of the day, that's going to increase your production significantly. So that's just kind of my like tip. I think people coming into the summer.
I think we need to adopt the if you don't sell, you don't eat mentality of like the whole day.
Well, that's pretty much what it is. Like at the end of the day, like if you're not making sales, you're not making money. If you're not making money, you don't eat. Like it's a hack because obviously it's not that extreme every day, but it's like you got to have these little things that drive you or incentivize you. And I think one of those big ones is competition during the summer.
There's to piggyback off that a little bit. I served my mission in St. George, Utah. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a LDS church mission. So just preaching the good word for 2 years. But there was a man that I met, and he owned 3 hospitals in Utah. His name's Dave Vincent. Guy's like an animal. Just one of my bigger role models. Biggest role models. He's awesome. I remember he asked me, like at the time I wanted to go to school to be a doctor, and he said, so, Jared, what do you want to go to school to be? I said, I'd love to be a doctor, make a lot of money. Just classic young kid mentality. Just do whatever it takes to make the most money. And I told him that, and he says, well, why? I said, well, I just like to have a boat or a cabin on the lake or whatever. And he says, at the end of the day, like, those are awesome things. Those are great goals. A lot of people want those things, but that's not going to be enough. And once again, this is already kind of piggybacking off of what we talked about a little bit earlier. But he says you have to think of something bigger. And at this point, if you're doing all that schooling, or in this case, doing all this work to learn how to become a good negotiator, communication skills, goal setting, whatever. Like you're doing this not for yourself anymore. You're doing it for your partner, your kids, your friends, your family. Like you're doing it for them. It's not about you anymore. And I feel like once you're able to kind of adopt that mentality of like, hey, this is the greater purpose, this is the goal, that's gonna push you more than anything else, because it's unselfishly you're going above and beyond for people that you love the most more than yourself. So just
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll throw out some of my final tips and tricks that I came up with. So the first one is just a simple phrase to remember. Talk slow, walk fast. So the whole concept behind this is, I'd say for rookies, one of the things that hurts their pitch the most is talking too fast. So intentionally slow it down. Like, people don't buy what they don't understand. And so oftentimes if you're just getting a lot of not interested right after your intro, you're probably just talking too fast. If you're getting people to say, we don't have any bugs, we already treat for the bugs, or we have another company. If you have anything like that coming out, like real objections, then you know that you're like at a good pace. But if you're getting a lot of just not interested straight out the gate, it's more often than not, they just didn't fully understand or hear you. And so that's a good litmus test to know, like, I need to slow it down. So talk slow, walk fast. The walk fast portion is just get in between the doors quickly. Like, you want to be like engaged. Like, you have to be like, in motion. Like, if you're kind of slowly kicking rocks, you're checking your phone in between doors, you're not going to be fully mentally in it. But if you're like hustling in between doors, it's going to keep you like mentally engaged in the work as well. So that's just a little phrase that I think carries a lot of weight to it. And then don't let a bad door turn into a bad day. So this one's really important. It's very easy to have some person like tell you to get a real job or curse you out or just like shut you down really hard. And then that can shake your confidence. And again, confidence in this is so important to have. And if you carry that over to the next door and the next door, it can really snowball. And then you're, just by the end of the day feeling so defeated. And so just, don't let it get to you. Like, just brush it off. Like, have the memory of a goldfish, forget about the last door, and just you're on to the next one with a smile and you're back to it. So don't let a bad door turn into a bad day. And then a little tip on if you get lost in the pitch. So when in doubt, close. Like, that is your golden parachute. Like, if you're kind of lost in the sauce, you're like, shoot, I've been talking about the service, I've been talking about this, I don't really know where to go with it. When in doubt, you just close them. Just a simple. So like I said, the catch this whole thing, we're just trying to get it done. We're going to be out here with all the other neighbors. Are you typically better in the morning or the afternoon? And then they're going to say, oh, like probably the afternoon, but I need to talk to my spouse. Or I'm not really sure, but we don't really have that many bugs. Like, they're going to give you some objection, and then you'll know where to go from there, because you're like, okay, I can overcome that objection. I can talk about a new bug, a new part of the service. Like, that'll kind of get you back on track in the sales cycle. Or they're going to surprise you sometimes, and they're just going to buy. Like, you're going to be floundering and lost, and you're like, okay, when in doubt, close, golden parachute, morning or afternoon, which works best for you? And they'll be like, probably afternoon. You're like, great, what's your last name? And they're like, Turner. Perfect. And you're just shocked that they're actually buying. But that's how it's going to go. So, like, when in doubt, you just want to close them, because it's either going to result in a sale or it's going to progress the sale further so you can kind of get back on track. And then beware of the happy win fallacy. This is a common one where oftentimes you start thinking, oh, I'll be happy when I start to sell more. Or I'll be happy when I get past the learning curve. I'll be happy when it's the end of the summer. Like, and this can be in anything in life. I'll be happy when I get to this milestone. And like, if you're always kind of chasing what's going to happen like in the future, then like you're not happy in the moment, and that's going to affect not only your production, but you're also just not going to enjoy the experience of the summer as much. So happiness is not a chase, it's a choice. So just, decide to be happy in the moment, even going through the suck and the hard parts of the summer and the things that you don't enjoy. Just decide that you're going to make the most of it and have a great experience, and you will. It's going to be probably, if you haven't done this before, one of the hardest jobs at least that you've done. And then, even if you have done it, it's a grind, like whether you've done it or not. But it is well worth the sacrifice. You'll get a lot out of it. You're going to make great friends, have great experiences. And again, you get what you give. So the more that you give to this, the more you're going to get out of it. And we'll just close it off saying that we're super excited to see what we're going to do. We're going to have by far, the biggest summer that we've ever had. We've got, great management, great teams that are going out there, and just really excited to see what everyone can go out there and do. So best of luck this summer, and we're excited to see you.